What's up and how are you? My name is Sean Nevills, COVID-19 Project Director, and your host for this webinar series featuring administrators out there in education. And why we bringing our administrators together? Because we want to hear about social emotional well-being and how physical education plays a part from their perspective. So it's been great to have our first two guests on, but today to talk about his SWAT team from Apache Junction High School in Arizona, I have Dr. Chris Lineberry. Chris, how are you?
I'm doing well, Sean. How are you?
Not bad at all. So before we get into the SWAT team, we'll get there. We'll get there. First, just tell us about yourself, your path through education, and then tell us about your high school.
Sure. So first, thanks for having me today. Appreciate the opportunity to talk and share from here in Arizona. As you said, my name is Chris Lineberry, and I am the principal at Apache Junction High School. I started my career in North Carolina. I was a high school teacher and a coach, and then became a assistant principal and then a principal. And Sean, that's where everything kind of shifted for me as far as my my path with health and wellness. I was in my first year, December, it was January of 2006, actually January 6th of 2006. And Reggie Bush, I think, had just won the national championship. And I had felt some chest pain at school. I just didn't feel right. So I called one of my paraprofessionals who was on the volunteer fire department, Diane Frick. And I said, Diane, can you come up and check my blood pressure? And she walked in the door, looked at me and said, son, you're having a heart attack, aren't you? And I said, no, I'm fine. And she said, boy, don't lie to me. And I said, Diane, just take my blood pressure. I'm fine. I just want to see where it is. And she took it. She looked at me and she said, well, first she asked me, are you having any pain in your jaw or down your arm or anything like that? And I, of course, said no. And then she took my blood pressure and it was 157 over 109. Wow. And she told me that. And I said, okay. So I kind of lied. I am having some pressure in my jaw and my arm does hurt. She said, I'm going to go ahead and call an ambulance. And I said, no, I'll just drive myself. And Diane, being the good North Carolinian that she is, she said, boy, your mom is not here. You're not my boss right now. Sit down, be quiet, and wait for the ambulance. And I said, yes, ma'am. And did that. And that really changed things. And I see what happened that day as a true gift. Because it helped me to not only recognize the importance of taking care of myself, but also to begin to look at the health and well-being of my students in a different way as a principal. I then moved here to Arizona in 2007, and we did some things to help improve health and wellness in our schools, both in North Carolina and here. And I'm just a strong advocate for the education of the whole child. I can't emphasize enough how important I think that is, not only the whole child, but I also think it's important that we support the whole employee, the whole teacher, the whole assistant principal, all the way, a whole custodian, the whole bus driver. I think it's really important.
Wow, it always takes something happening to ourselves or in our lives to really focus health and wellness inward. And then as we learn to, as we're going to talk about here, share that with others, students and educators as well, and hopefully families too, if you have that impact. So again, tell us real quick about your high school and how has your high school been impacted by COVID this year?
Well, as I said, I'm the principal at Apache Junction High School. We're right at the foot of the Superstition Mountains. We have one of the best views, I think, in Arizona of those mountains. It's a small town. We have about 39,000, 40,000 people who live there. My student body is about 900 to 1,000, depending on, well, it started at 1,000, but as COVID happened, we lost some enrollment. Here in Arizona, there are a lot of kids who are quote unquote missing in education. That have just, for whatever reason, dropped off the radar when it comes to school. But it's a small town school, but we are also in the Phoenix metro area. We have a fairly high rate of free and reduced lunch. And it's honestly, I absolutely love it. I love working in the high school. I've got a wonderful staff. I've got incredible kids. But we were impacted in a very profound way by COVID. We were unfortunately one of the schools across the country that lost a teacher as a result of COVID-19. And that was really devastating. It was devastating for me as a leader and as a person. It was devastating for our students. She worked with our life skills kids, and that group of kids, because they're self-contained, they're there all day. It was very impactful on our staff as well. So, and we had, a couple of outbreaks during the year back in October, November, where we were sending groups of kids home. Our football team got quarantined at the end of the season. But losing that teacher, I think, is really where, as a school and as a district, our district made some decisions about, we're going to go to online until this thing gets settled and our numbers really get under control. And I'm very proud of the board and of my superintendent for their leadership through this, because nobody signed up to be on a school board thinking that they were going to be making decisions regarding a pandemic. But again, I think that, we're the prospectors. That's our mascot. And our tagline is "We mine human potential." And that really is what this year's been about, is capitalizing on, we're in a tough situation. We can certainly help kids to advance educationally, but there's a whole other side of this where we have an opportunity for growth and in grit and perseverance. And I think it's an opportunity to learn a lot about ourselves.
One thing you did mention is kudos to all of those professionals, those educators in and out of the building, right? Because the board, our school boards are ultimately the ones that make the decisions. They're the families or the business owners, the community members that sacrifice their time to support the school
Absolutely
in a very impactful way. So yes, thank you to those board members on top of our administrators and everybody down to our teachers and families that have made this year possible. Yeah, so let's get to the health and wellness side of the conversation and your school. Let me get this right. The Student Wellness Advocacy Team. All right, tell us about that.
That's SWAT, baby. Our SWAT program. We have a health class that all of our students have to take. It's a requirement to be able to graduate. Our teacher, who's in charge of that class, we started a student wellness advocacy team. So we have our school health advisory council, our SHAC, but so our SHAC is really focused on our whole school, and it's focused on also a portion of it is about staff health and wellness. And then our SWAT team is focused on the whole school, and they also focus on student health and wellness. And it's from a student perspective, which I think is extremely powerful. And in talking to those kids that were involved with our SWAT team and kids who were involved in our student council, mental health, social emotional health was extremely important to them this school year. So during pre-pandemic, our SWAT team, we partnered up with our local Parks and Rec department, AJ Parks and Rec, and they would come over and teach classes during lunch. Sometimes it was Zumba. Sometimes it was they set up a soccer tournament, or they set up a basketball tournament, or a Frisbee golf tournament. Just different things to keep kids engaged. We have a 45-minute lunch. We have one lunch. So there's a lot of time during that time, one, for kids to sit down and eat, which I think is an important component of what we ought to be doing in schools. And two, it's an opportunity for them to socialize. And we know that socialization, as has been magnified by this pandemic, is so important, not only to kids, but to us too, right? So we have that long lunch so that kids do have that opportunity to decompress and do that. And our SWAT program helps to support that.
Thinking about lunches, yeah, I remember when I was in high school, 30 minutes, that flew by. I mean, you would eat 15, then you're there doing what? Or probably you're eating and you look up and it's already ready. You got to go back to class. So that's really helpful that you give them that time, not just to obviously eat their food, but to socialize and to speak with each other. You mentioned your shack though, you have a school health council as well. A whole school health council. So tell us a little bit about that as well.
Sure. So we have various committees on our campus that focus on different areas. We have one that's focused on academic achievement and increasing performance. We have one that's focused on community engagement, getting us engaged and getting them engaged. We have one that's focused on climate and culture on our campus. Then we have one that's focused on health and safety. So that committee of teachers, which also we include students in, work to ensure that we're doing things on our campus to promote health, wellness, and security and safety, in order to help us to provide opportunities for people to not only receive educational materials, but also opportunities for screenings. We had the truck come this year and do the breast cancer screenings on our campus. We through our student council are continually, multiple times throughout the year, doing blood drives. And then also my next project is going to be to start working with our food service department and looking at ways that we can improve child nutrition on our campus as well.
So that's pretty amazing. Not only do you have, this adult, this educator group working for health and wellness, but then you also have a student-led group or a student-directed group. So, and I think if anything, and you kind of alluded to it, is that student choice and voice has truly mattered during this time.
Without a doubt. And I think a lot of times, not because of anything nefarious, but a lot of times student voice gets left out. And what I found, and I know administrators across the country are doing this as well, is that our kids can give us a lot of really fantastic insight into not only how we can help them, but how they can help us. And I just think that this group of kids that's coming up now seems to have a good grasp on the importance of mental health and social emotional wellness.
It is truly a different generation of students and young people that we have in this world now. But, if you think about society as a whole and so much that's happening and going on with, a lot of societal injustices and disparities on top of, the wave of social media and actually seeing these things and having to witness them, it really does. It really puts this generation in a different spot, than we were, and really have to focus on their mental health more than anything. So
there's a lot on that.
Yes, there is. I can imagine being in that building, how it works for you. So how have those two groups, your shack and your SWAT team, came together and really worked together? Or, what successes did you see come out of this pandemic because of those groups?
Well, I think one thing that's been very important because this is my second year at the high school. So prior to being there, I was at Stanfield Elementary for 6 years. And while at Stanfield, we were able to because I was there for an extended period of time, we were able to do a lot of things to bring about positive change, not only physically for kids, but social emotionally. And that's really my goal here at Apache Junction High School. So what I would like to see happen, and what we have started to do, is change the way that we interact with kids, which I think is extremely important. When a kid is having a difficult time or melting down, I think a lot of times, we deal with trauma, we deal with, especially in the pandemic, kids having traumatic experiences, whether it's losing their house. I have students who their parents lost their jobs and they were supporting the family. So being able to put things in place and constantly encouraging through messaging the importance of self-care, the importance of making sure that you reach out and that you know that we care about you. I think that, that it's a bit cliche now, I guess, but, kids don't care what you know until they know that you care. So our SHAC and our SWAT team are going to continue to work together. We have a mindfulness room on our campus that is set up so that when we do have kids who are in crisis, who are melting down, that they have a place to go. The goal ultimately is that they're going to come to us and ask to go there. It's just a quiet room with soft lighting and music and a place for them to decompress. And we're trying to change the way that discipline is taking place on our campus as well. And that's with a trauma-informed, kid-centered approach that, when kids come in, we can't just lecture them. We talk with them, and oftentimes what you find is that the behavior is but a symptom of a much larger issue. And when you take the time to have those conversations with kids, not only do you learn about what's going on there and causing the behavior and can help them, but you're also building rapport and relationships, which are so incredibly important. Because I'm a firm believer that, again, kids don't care what you know till they know that you care. And once they know that you care, my experience has been kids will walk through walls for you. And if they know that you'll do it for them. And somebody has to walk through the wall first and be willing to do that. And that's our job as educators. None of us got into this business because we want to get rich. We got into this business because we want to make a difference. And I believe that as we change that approach and it becomes more restorative with discipline, which again, our SHAC and our SWAT team are going to be involved in how we do that. We've talked about wanting to set up kids court so that when we do have major discipline issues, kids are helping to decide alternatives to a long-term suspension for one another with the help of a judge and law enforcement, because there are times we have kids who will bring marijuana or THC vape pens, which are a huge issue in high schools across the country right now. But being able to give them an opportunity to engage in that restorative justice, I think, is really important.
Nice. And you mentioned two things in that part of the conversation. You mentioned messaging and relationships. And I say that to say that I am on and I'm speaking to Dr. Lineberry here, who is also a fellow podcaster. So what inspiration did you have? Because I know I have mine, but what inspiration did you have that led you to podcast?
So what I wanted to do was originally, I just wanted it to be a place where I could talk with people who had experienced different challenges in life that the lessons could translate into what we as administrators deal with every day. There are a lot of times where, as an administrator, as an educator, period, but I think particularly in administration, you deal with a lot of things that are really hard to deal with sometimes, and issues where kids are impacted, and you can take that home with you, and you sit up at night and you worry about them. So I wanted to try to have a voice that would echo that sentiment, but then bring people in and talk with others who have been through difficult things and talk about how they were able to manage it. When COVID hit, I thought, well, this is a great opportunity to stay connected with my community and also to give kids resources so that they know, hey, you know what? We're all in the same, we're in the same, we're in the same storm, just in different boats. Yeah. The storm is beating us all right now. And these are how people around you and people who have faced much greater challenges than we're facing right now have dealt with it. Maybe this can help you to be able to deal with it as well.
How's it been going? How's the podcasting game been going for you?
You know, I enjoy it. I love talking to people. So I talk to people all day, and I've gotten
Aren't we all as teachers, we are naturally just prone to talk. Go ahead.
Yep. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I've gotten to meet some really incredible people. I got to sit down and talk with Roman Roselle, who this guy was he's from Apache Junction, which is why his story is so important to my students. He grew up there, and I'm not sharing anything he doesn't share when he talks or that's in the podcast, but grew up in a trailer park, grew up with a challenging home life, made some bad decisions, ended up getting a girl pregnant, and then joining the Army, and did a couple of tours, or did a tour in Afghanistan, came back, and as he talks, the demons really were rough. At that time, his solution was, I'll re-enlist. So he re-enlisted to become a Green Beret. While he was training to be a Green Beret, found out his wife had cancer. Then shortly after that, he was on a training mission, and he got hit by lightning on the training mission. Then he went to Afghanistan again as a Green Beret. He's been involved in 16 different explosions. Has neck issues, traumatic brain injury, etc. Comes back home, gets the help that he needs, decides to go back to school, gets a degree in sociology, becomes the oldest athlete in NCAA history. Division I, 35 years old, wrestled for Arizona State University, and is now working as a professional wrestler. And his goal is to get to a point where he can give back to his community. So his story resonates with my students because he grew up like they do. And not everybody has a challenging, the challenges he faced, but we all face challenges. And just hearing from him how he was able to overcome those and persevere, I think inspires others to be able to do the same.
Nice. Well, we'll get that podcast information here at the end. But one more thing I want to talk about that you mentioned in your blog is the Prospector Coalition. So tell us about that.
Yeah. So what we're doing as far as our school improvement goes is we've established the Prospector Coalition, which is a group of teachers, community members, and students. And an arm of that, as I described earlier, is health and wellness. So we've had community members who are doctors who have been involved in that. We have our SWAT leader who's involved in that. We also have students who are involved in that. And we look at ways that with the Prospector Coalition as a systemic system, how can we implement change in health and wellness that can contribute to our greater mission, which is to improve the lives of kids academically, physically, socially, emotionally. So that Prospector Coalition, I think, is really valuable because we open it up to bring everybody to the table.
Nice. And Prospector Coalition, my faults on that. Well, Chris, we appreciate your time. That was a lot of great stuff, a lot of good things you have going on, especially with not just your educator school wellness team, but then also your student-led team. And then, you and I kind of shared that vision, in this role coming into this school year is that, the podcast isn't just a talking head. We're not just talking heads, but we're trying to stay connected to our groups.
Absolutely.
And share resources. So once again, thank you for being a part of this, our conversation and our blog that's going to come up with this. But any last words before I truly let you go? Last words, and how can we follow you in your podcast?
Fantastic. So the first thing I would say is thank you again for having me. But I think that what COVID has done for me And I think just like my heart attack did for me, was it helped me to better be able to define my why as an educator. And I think it did that for schools. I know it did that for our staff, and I think that it did that for our kids. Well, there you go. Simon Sinek. Yes, sir. Why, starting with why and focusing on that why is so important. And, this really solidified that for me. And I think it gave me a much wider berth to be able to talk about my why, because I think so many other people began to look at their why as well. And what this year was about is certainly we want to improve academic achievement, but we want to build those relationships with kids. My goal is to improve the lives of every person that I come in contact with every day, every one of the families in my community, every one of the students in my school, every one of the staff members in my school. So being able to dive deeper into my why and really reaffirm that, I think has been a valuable part of COVID. There's been a lot of bad, but I think it's been a really valuable part of COVID and us being able to provide for kids. In order to follow the podcast, it's the Prospector's Pickaxe. You can find it on Anchor. You can find it on Apple, the Apple podcasts, on Google Podcasts. It's on all the different podcasting sites, but it's called the Prospector's Pickaxe: Mining Human Potential.
Thank you so much, podcaster and principal, excuse me, from Apache Junction High School in Arizona, Dr. Chris Lineberry. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sean.